Hey guys, welcome back. I've got a STIHL FS55 trimmer. No spark at the plug. I've tried an old plug, a new plug, still no spark. So what this machine needs is the ignition coil to be replaced. Now the tools you'll need today is a Torx T27 screwdriver and a pair of vice grips. I'll be using my Torx bit T27 on my impact to remove the parts. So before I get started here, I just want to show you that there is actually no spark. So what I'm doing here is grounding out the plug with my scrunch, just like this. Make sure the switch is on and then pull. And the spark is extremely weak. If you leave it sit for a day or so, you might get spark for the first few pulls, but after you don't. And I'll even try a new plug, as I told you I've already did, but just to show you here. So no spark whatsoever. This is the second machine that I have to replace the ignition module this week. I never really have to replace them on the FS38s, but the FS55, for some reason, I replace a lot of coils on them. So the way I do this is I grab a firm hold of the trimmer and then I go underneath here and remove about 6 screws. And the reason I hold it firmly is so that everything doesn't actually come apart on me with the throttle trigger. You'll have 2 at the front here. And then you have to take this one off. And then what you do is you reach in right in here, right there, and take this one off. Now your top cover will come right off the machine. And try to keep everything in place here. So pop this off. And this is where the vice grips come in handy. I just clamp them over here. So here's your ignition module. There's 2 Torx screws that are T27 that hold it on. Now before I remove the coil, I will remove this connector here. This is the switch wire. Now get the coil off by removing both screws. Now the negative wire over here is on a connector like this, so just leave that wire there. And here's the old ignition module, or coil as they call them. Not exactly sure why it failed. It's hard to properly test them because if you leave them sit, they'll be charged up again and give you a bit of spark, and after that you may not get spark. So the best way to know if it's dead is just disconnect the kill wire here that goes here and pull the machine over that way to make sure it's not an electrical problem with your machine. I should have showed you that, but I have showed that in another video. By disconnecting this, you're bypassing all the electrical. But the FS55s do have a problem with coils, so that's why I'm just going ahead and replacing it. The customer is okay with a used coil that I have here. I just put a bit of dab of paint to recognize that this is the good coil. And I can see that the part numbers on the coils are the same. Now you can also use a coil from an old FS38 trimmer. They're all interchangeable. So what I'll do here now is line up the coil, put this wire over here. And I'll be tightening up the screws by hand manually with a screwdriver, not the impact. So what I'm going to do here is lift the coil as high as I can, snug up the screws, and what I'll do here is line up the magnets right under the coil. So what you want here are the 2 magnets to be right below the metal parts of the coil. The reason why I lifted the coil as high as I could go and snugged it up is so that I can get a piece of paper in between the flywheel and the coil so that I can gap it. It's much easier if the coil is high, you loosen the screws and let it go down on the flywheel with your spacer in between. You can use a business card. So what I'll be using today is a piece of cardboard from a belt sleeve, and what I will do is insert it between the coil and the flywheel with the magnets lined up to the coil like I just told you to do. And I'm going to come back and loosen the screws. This will bring the coil right down where it should be. And the magnets help because that's the main part of the flywheel that will help you get spark. And now just tighten up your 2 screws. Then you can carefully move the flywheel to get that paper out. And then you can check your gap again and check for spark. And we do have spark now. So before I put the top cover on, I'll show you everything here. Here's how it's installed. And you want to follow where the small wires go as well so that they're away from the flywheel. They go behind here, come down here, and work their way up to the switch. Here's how this is installed. Now what I need to do over here is line up the shaft to the screw right under here. Let me show you that screw. That screw right here sits in a hole on the shaft of the machine. It must have come out of place here when I took it apart, so I'll show you how I am going to realign that so that I can put it back together properly. So what I'll do here is hold the shaft to it and then just slide it back a bit. Now I'm going to go underneath and just loosen that screw. It's right in the center here. Sometimes I can do it without having to deal with that screw, but today must have got out of whack. Now what helps too when you do this repair for the reassembling is if you put something right underneath here for support once you remove the vice grips. And here comes the fun part. Make sure to get your spark plug wire through here. And try to keep this all together while you're doing this so that it doesn't come apart on you. And once you get it in and the throttle works and everything lines up, just hold it firmly and get some screws started right away. So I'll just start them up with the impact here. And once I have a few screws on there, it will not come apart on you. And that's the worst part of the whole job, is actually putting this back together. Once you're past this, you're pretty well at your home run for the installation. And one at the bottom here. And the screw that was in here is still there because it was held by the cable. And now what I'll do is manually go by hand and snug all these screws up. This here is the metal screw I was talking about that screws into the shaft. There's a hole in the shaft for that screw to line it up. And don't forget the 2 screws at the front. And I'll install the new spark plug. Okay, let's try this machine. Switch is on. I'll prime it. I think it might have been flooded because the customer was trying to start it and it had no spark. So if that's the case, I'm just going to pull it over with the choke off and the throttle wide open. let's try one more time here. Very good. So if you're wondering what kind of warranty I give on a used coil, I always tell my customers, if I put a used coil on your machine, I will guarantee it for the rest of the year. It gives people confidence and they usually go for it, because to put in a brand new coil, it would have cost more than double the price here than what I charge them for a used coil. Sometimes I just charge like 25, 40 bucks, depending on what the coil is for and what it costs brand new. So that's all you got to do, guys. Check for spark. If you have spark on your machine when it's cold and it's been sitting, but immediately there's no spark, and you do this again the next day, spark, it's gone, you need to replace the ignition module. Thanks for watching, guys. Please comment below, and you guys have a great day.